The Lumina Amator series speakers are beneficiaries of the trickle-down economy at play when a brand has the breadth to produce speakers ranging from $1,600 a pair to upwards of 100 times that. Stick around while I share what I heard when auditioning the elegant Sonus Faber Lumina 5 Amator floor-standing loudspeakers.
Hi, my name is Martin Bell. I'm the founder and CEO of Java Hi-Fi. We're an amplifier manufacturer from New Zealand. Well, I think we wanted to do something different. We wanted to use some new technologies. We wanted to have some new industrial design. I came up with the name Java Hi-Fi because I am a real coffee aficionado, and of course Java is slang for coffee, and hence that has carried through to the naming of the single shot and the double shot. It was 4 letters. We were able to make a cool kind of waveform logo out of the name. And I'd like to think perhaps that I'm something like a conductor of an orchestra. I'm not necessarily the engineer or the designer, but I can work with great people in those fields to bring a product to life.
Lumina represents the entry into Sonus Faber's catalog of passive loudspeakers and has only 2 components not inherited from collections above it: its cabinet and its woofers. Everything else was originally developed for products with a higher price point in mind, and it pays dividends. The crossovers in the Lumina 5 Amator were developed by inheriting circuitry design for the new Homage collection, specifically the Amati G5 and Guarneri G5, one of the many improvements over its predecessor, the Lumina 5. Getting into the driver array, keep in mind Sonus Faber is an Italian company, so driver measurements are given in millimeters. The 29mm damped apex dome, or DAD tweeter, is a hand-me-down from the Sonetta collection just above Lumina in the lineup, and features a compliant metallic piece at the dome's apex to afford more control over the tweeter's excursion. Also developed for the Sonetta collection, the 150mm mid-range driver features Sonus Faber's proprietary natural fiber and paper blend air-dried diaphragm. I think the glossy dust cap featuring the Sonus Faber logo provides an additional touch of elegance. And the 2 165mm woofers developed specifically for the Lumina series round out the complement of drivers. The published frequency response for the Lumina 5 Amator is 38 Hz to 24 kHz, something my measurements confirmed. Color options for the front baffle include Wenge, which is a dark brown, walnut, or, as with my review pair, red, all in a high-gloss, multi-layer wood veneer. Honestly, I didn't think I was going to like the red, but it really grew on me. It's not as bombastic as it might sound. All 3 color options come with a black leather appointed cabinet. This felt like a real luxury product and definitely punches up in its price range, which I should probably mention before going any further. The Lumina 5 Amator sits at the top of the Lumina line and retails for $4,500 a pair US. So while they're not cheap, they offer an incredible bargain when considering what's packed inside. With their rated 86 dB sensitivity into their 4 ohm load, this speaker is likely to perform well with most of the amplification available on the market. Closing out the technical specifications, let me give you the physical dimensions. The Lumina 5 Amator stands 41 inches tall, is 8 inches wide, and 12 inches deep. The size of the speaker felt like it would fit well in most spaces without feeling overbearing or too small. Oh, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing. And if you like what you see here, you might consider subscribing to our print magazine, published since 1973. Before getting into how they sounded, I just want to give you a little overview of the equipment I used for the review. Streams were primarily sourced from my Roon server through a DCS Lena streaming DAC and master clock. After becoming intimately familiar with them over the past few months, I left the AGD Solo monoblocks in my system for amplification, and power was conditioned using an AudioQuest PowerQuest 303 and supplied using Shinyata Research Venom power cables. Ethernet was switched through an English Electric 8 switch using AudioQuest Pearl network cables. And for speaker wire, I used my Via Blue SC6 Air cables. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we can get into what you all are here for: sound quality. With the voicing that the designers at Sonus Faber have baked into the Lumina 5 Amator, just about anything in your album collection is going to sound enjoyable when played through them. They provided ample bass extension and convey the upper end of the spectrum with a genteel ease. Let's actually start with that. Many speakers that play in and around the $5,000 mark, frankly, some that go for a lot more than that, tend to get a bit peaky around the crossover to the tweeter. Peaks in this area often come through as edgy or crunchy, and frequently cause listener fatigue. I've formed conjecture that this is intentionally done as an attempt to present the illusion of definition and provide the listener with a more hi-fi sound. Of course, I'm a cynic, so it may simply be that this area is just really challenging to smoothen out and requires an architecture that manufacturers wouldn't be able to retail for $5,000 without sending their business into a financial nosedive. I'm not sure why I felt the need for that tangent here, other than to say the Lumina 5 does not present the music with fatiguing peaks in the upper mid-range and lower treble. Their frequency response remains relatively flat from 1 kHz on, so apparently it can be done, or maybe the speaker is just a loss leader for Sonus Faber. At any rate, this does come with trade-offs. While the speaker eliminates fatiguing peaks, this means that the levels of most instruments' harmonics are ever so subtly held back. That is, their timbre isn't as well defined. That isn't to say timbral definition is absent, it's just slightly subdued when compared to the absolute sound, our benchmark for comparison. If I put my nitpicky analytical hat on for just a moment, instruments didn't have the gentle airiness and detailed separation that I've heard on other equipment. But the balanced voicing of this speaker, gently leaning into the warm side, put me in a position to happily remove that hat and enjoy the music. That is to say, the Lumina 5 never left me wanting. In fact, from the upper bass through the middle of the mid-range, where most fundamentals sit, the speaker really shines. This was most obvious to me when listening to The Girl in the Tree from Latvian radio big band's album Big Band Minimalism. This track has a lot going on, and during the intro there's a blast from the trumpeters that's been described as potent. With their subtly rounded treble, the Lumina 5s take some of the edge off of this potent blast. The stage is now set for Magnus Viklund to come in with his stellar trombone solo, and boy did the Luminas set the stage nicely. A wonderful tonal balance that made the trombonist come to life in front of me. This track also features a heavy dose of double bass, and these speakers presented this with all the heft I'd expect. A fantastic track for testing an equipment's ability to believably render bass transients is the bass and drums intro from the Niels Lofgren Band live album. Again, the Lumina 5s had no trouble with bass extension, but as Wade Matthews works his way up to the top string on his bass, and the Luminas approach their roll-off, that snap of the initial transient as he plucked the string was missing. Something many speakers of this size and in this price range struggle to define well. This also meant that when the Lumina 5s rendered kick drum on most recordings, it was with a more fluffy thump than a hard pow. It might sound a little like I'm damning with faint praise, and my hope is that's not what your takeaway from this is. I really enjoyed listening to this set of speakers, and that's coming from someone who tends to prefer a defined, articulate sound. It's just that it's my job to tell you what I've heard, so you're able to make a more informed buying decision. And as I've previously stated, the speaker is pretty darn articulate where the lion's share of fundamental tones sit. When it comes to imaging, the Lumina 5s excel. Only at unnecessarily high listening levels did the image occasionally collapse around the speaker. The image presented stretched from speaker to speaker with a noticeable depth, and individual performers were distinctly positioned on stage, although lacking space between them, even if just. And this never became a distraction from enjoying the music. The way this speaker presents a sound space meant the recording was going to have to do the brunt of the heavy lifting here. That is to say, if a recording was done well and captured all the detail in the space within which the recording was made, The Lumina 5s were able to leverage that and transform the room around me. If, on the other hand, recording engineers took a more subtle approach to featuring the venue in the recording, the Lumina 5s restricted the rendering of the sound space to a simple highlighting of the artfully rendered sound stage. Honestly, after spending a couple months with these elegant floor standers, these should be on every fledgling audiophile's list of must-hears. They're positioned at an accessible price point and provide listeners with a well-rounded example of what dedicated music listening can be. Drawn out of the pedigree of a time-honored brand in audio, the Sonus Faber Lumina 5 Amator floor-standing loudspeaker is not only dressed to impress, but also has the goods to do the job. I hope you'll find your nearest dealer and have a listen for yourself. Until then, enjoy the music, and remember, don't forget to make listening fun again.